Hollywood adaptations. The popular theory says they always are worse than the original. Author of the Game of Thrones books, George R. R. Martin, recently blogged about his issue with Hollywood adaptations. Everywhere you look, there are more screenwriters and producers eager to take great stories and make them their own. It's only the first episode of Season 4 of Only Murders in the Building, but do you see someone trying to make their own version of Only Murders? As Oliver said, they just need a hot, fresh, dead body. Let's solve Only Murders in the Building, Season 4, Episode 1. Once upon a time in the West, Charles, Oliver, and Mabel are whisked to Los Angeles, where a legendary film studio intends to adapt their podcast. However, Hollywood's glitz is overshadowed by a stunning clue about Charles' stunt double and friend, Sazz Pataki. We'll be breaking down each episode for clues, suspects, and red herrings on the hunt to learn who shot Sazz. And maybe just as important a question, is Sazz faking her own death? I know what you're thinking. Are we back in the tinfoil hat theories like Ben Glenroy has an identical twin? Well, we may be wearing a tinfoil hat, but there are a few hints in this episode that imply Sazz isn't really dead. And hey, maybe you're upset. Maybe you want a tinfoil hat theory. We've got one for you. We're going to talk about it at the end of the podcast before we get to your feedback. So once again, we're looking at who shot Sazz. Also, maybe we'll go back to who poisoned Winnie the dog. Do we have an answer to that one? Spoilers for the first 3 seasons of Only Murders in the Building. If you haven't seen all 30 episodes, pause this video, bring up a photo of Macaulay Culkin and Zach Galifianakis to compare, and then come back and watch. Use the timestamps below to jump to the topic or suspect that you want to hear, and that'll allow you to skip past stuff you don't want to hear. Now let me interrupt this by giving a warning. I was on Instagram yesterday, mindlessly scrolling through my Instagram feed, when suddenly, out of the blue, Instagram suggested a post to me, and it was a huge spoiler for Only Murders in the Building. It was cell phone video of a scene that was filmed at the Belnor, the building in New York that's the real-life Arconia. Now, based on what was being filmed, this would be a scene for Season 4, Episode 10. While it doesn't exactly reveal Sazz's killer, based on what was being filmed, you'd assume that if the actors were at this scene, they weren't in jail for their characters in jail for having killed Sazz. It revealed the return of a Season 3 character that I didn't know was coming back, and it spoiled the conclusion to a major Season 4 storyline. Be careful online, Clue Crew. Only theories in the comments. No flat-out spoilers, please. If you've missed it, we've already done a Let's Solve on the Season 4 trailers and teasers. It's a look into all the teasers, videos, and early information to see if we could figure out who shot Sazz. If you like our Let's Solve series, be sure to check out our Let's Solve breakdown of Season 2 of The After Party. We have a Let's Solve series on the show A Murder at the End of the World. And if you can't get enough of cozy murder mysteries, we've done a series of Let's Solve Magpie murder videos, and you may want to check those out because during this season, Season 4 of Only Murders in the Building, we'll be doing the Magpie Murders sequel, Let's Solve Moonflower Murders. If you watch that show, you'll be ready for Season 2 of that series. It's a new season and we've got new opening credit clues. Howard is walking Gravy. Oh man. Mrs. Gambolini, Sevelin, they're going to be jealous that Gravy is getting the walk. There's also the blink and you miss it shadow of an airplane flying to Los Angeles. The closing credits had the Old Belgium beer that we talked about last season, and Old Belgium might be Hercule Poirot, Agatha Christie's character. There's also the mock-up of the Only Murders in the Building movie poster. New for Season 4, we're going to have to talk about the episode title clues. It's being reported that every episode title in Season 4 references a film. This week, Episode 1 references the old Western, Once Upon a Time in the West. Now, I've seen this one. It's a very classic, maybe bleak Western. Stars a very silent, strong type, Charles Bronson. Now, there's a white-haired white guy in the film, Henry Fonda. Henry Fonda was famous for playing good guys, but in this movie, he's the black hat. He's the villain. The female lead in this movie is Claudia Cardinale. Oliver would describe her as beautiful Claudia Cardinale. It ends with a big, classic shootout. where all the characters come together and try to kill each other. Many of these characters, as you might imagine, are sharpshooters. Honestly, I don't see a direct correlation to season 4, but let me know. Have you guys seen the film? Are there any things we should take from the title other than our heroes, the podcasters, went out west? Before we run down the suspects, let's see what the first episode taught us about the victim, actor/stunt double, Sazz Pataki. Sazz, as we all know, is Charles's stunt double on the original version of Brazzos. Now, in season 6 of that original run of Brazzos, Charles's girlfriend Cookie cheated on him with Sazz, and then those two began a relationship. However, Cookie could not stay faithful to Sazz either and left her after 20 years together. In Only Murders Season 2, Sazz began a relationship with Jan, as she broke up with Jan for Charles back then. Now, Sazz lives in an old Hollywood apartment complex, the Sunset Swan. It's where Charles used to live before he broke big with Brazzos. Sazz's mail has been built up. It's only been a week, but look at how much mail she has left around, as if she wants people to notice it. In Sazz's apartment is very prominently displayed her stunt injuries and those Bulgarian joint replacement parts front and center. Sazz's killer has Sazz's phone and is able to send Charles text messages. Detective Williams would easily be able to tell exactly where those messages were sent from, New York City or LA. The first message is, "Sorry, I had to jet off last minute to cover Bakula on set in LA." The final one is much more ominous, "Not your effing friend." Now, if you do the timeline correct, Sazz says that she was supposed to double for Scott Bakula the same week that she got shot, but this is a week later, and Scott Bakula says she never showed up the previous week, aka the week she got shot. Now, somebody seems to be monitoring and following the podcasters. With this shot from above, should we assume that someone was watching them break into Sazz's apartment? In her apartment, the trio hear a noise. Was that watching person there in the room with them? Sazz's desk is covered with stuff. I talked about some of this stuff in our preview of the trailer. But note on her desk, the West Tower of the Arconia. There's a receipt, and someone has written on it 2 notes. She also wants to cancel a doctor's appointment. There's also a script, which is real funny. The script is titled, "Access Denied. The Future is Terminal." We see a calendar, it looks like, with the words "Long Game" written on it. A note that says "Looking at Charles." A plane ticket with the name Helga on it. Now, real quickly, let's talk about the idea that Sazz is faking her own death. Why would you read this as her faking her own death? Well, as we all know, when there's no body, you do have to wonder in a murder mystery, where is the body? We just saw on her desk that she canceled a doctor's appointment like she wasn't going to be around for it. Let's talk about the note that Lester the doorman got, which said, "Hey, can you replace Charles's window?" On one hand, replacing that window with a bullet hole in it is a great way to cover up that there's been a crime and keep this hidden. On the flip side, that's awfully nice of the killer to make sure Charles's window got fixed when the killer punched a hole in it. The crew end up, when all is said and done, back in the furnace room. Is this our first time back in the furnace room since Jan brought Charles here in season 1? Charles looks through the furnace and he sees these Bulgarian joint replacement devices. Does that mean Sazz is dead? Or is Sazz planting something to make people think she's dead? Right now, we don't know if the shooter was trying to kill Charles or trying to kill Sazz. But what's funny is in season 3, Sazz talks to Charles about Ben Glenroy's death. And Sazz wonders, "Hey Charles, is it possible that the killer was trying to get you, not Ben Glenroy?" It's almost like Sazz was incepting the idea into Charles's head that somebody might be trying to kill him. Now we've also got just the flat out reality that if there's just one solitary killer to shoot Sazz, then somehow get over to Charles's apartment, pick up Sazz's body, dump it down the furnace chute, then clean up all that blood before Charles gets home without anybody else on the floor noticing, that's pretty tough. That would be an incredible feat. I'm not saying that there's not a killer, but that's an awful lot to do. Could it mean there are 2 killers? One to shoot, the other to clean up the body and hide it? We saw Sazz get shot. We believe Sazz is dead. But I mentioned the old Belgium being Hercule Poirot, the Agatha Christie character. It's not a Hercule Poirot novel, but in one of Agatha Christie's most famous novels, the reader thinks someone has been shot and is dead, but they have not been shot, and they are not dead. Could that be happening here? What do you guys think? Is Sazz dead and burned in the furnace? Or are there more twists to come? You know what I need you to do? Write down in the comments, hey, give us a like if you're enjoying this. We want to hear your thoughts. Now let's look at the suspects we've got. In the first episode of Season 3, we were introduced to so many new characters. Season 4 is kind of similar, but how many do you actually suspect are real suspects? First up, Bev Melon, the studio executive who sees the IP for Only Murders in the Building and wants to make that movie. She claims she jumped on the idea because rival studios were interested. She's got to get her film to come out before Christmas. Seemingly, Bev wants more than just the story of Only Murders in the Building podcast. She's asking for their life rights. Is there something in Charles's background with his history with Sazz where Bev wouldn't want the public to know about it? At the big party where she's introducing the cast of Only Murders in the Building, on her phone she reads about in the kitchen, you need to know this pizza recipe. She swipes right and breaking news appears on her phone right as Mabel walks in. Bev doesn't seem to care about the price. Studio executives are very concerned about costs. Yet for the life rights, she's willing to pay anything, it seems like. We have the Brothers sisters, Trina and Tawny, identical twins that are almost identical. They had a big Grand Prix win at Cannes, as well as a heartwarming Walmart ad campaign. I'm going to speak about the sisters again, but first let's turn to Marshall, the writer of this movie. He wants it to be accurate. Marshall is listening closely. He's a fly on the wall. He wants to be there to make sure he gets it right. Marshall and the Brothers sisters are always in the background. They're in the background of many scenes, including when the cast is introduced. They are hovering and listening. The next 4 people you may not consider suspects. First up, Eugene Levy. He did the Canadian voiceovers for when Brazzos would air in Quebec. Eugene Levy and Martin Short in real life not only performed together in the late 70s and early 80s on SCTV, they've been performing together since 1972, when they were in the infamous 1972 production of Godspell in Toronto. Andrea Martin, who plays Joy, she was on SCTV and also on the 1972 cast of Godspell. These 3 have been together so long, we're waiting for Catherine O'Hara, Dave Thomas, Rick Moranis. Let's get them all here. Eva Longoria will be playing the film version of Mabel. They're practically the same age. What do you guys think? Was Eva's advice to Mabel good advice? There's Zach Galifianakis. Zach wants to portray Oliver's character with a slight change, making him talented, successful, and aware it's 2024. His dream project seems to be an Aaron Brockovich-type project, or literally redoing Aaron Brockovich with a gender flip to him. Finally, Scott Bakula is dating Joy now. We have to take Bakula's word that Sazz never showed up to double him. Loretta Durkin's here. She's having a great time acting on the new show Grey's New Orleans Family Burn Unit. Her cast members love her, and she wants Oliver to move to LA to be closer with her. She even seems excited when Oliver seemingly proposes. Howard. Okay, Howard was Oliver's assistant director, right, in Death Rattle Dazzle? Now that the play's closing, should we assume he's out of a job? Is Howard's boyfriend Jonathan out of a job? Howard, he rolls with the punches. Now, Howard says when he picked up Gravy the dog, they didn't tell him about Gravy's job. But later in the episode, he knows that Gravy was a cadaver dog. Are you going to listen to the Animal Jobs podcast? Be sure to give it a good review on Apple Podcast. We have this scene of the podcast trio going through Sazz's apartment in the dark in Los Angeles. Howard is back in New York. That's 3 hours ahead. So if this is taking place at like 10 o'clock at night, Howard is sending this text message at 1 in the morning. And that's the same of Lester the doorman. He gets a note asking to replace Charles's window, and he calls Charles very, very late in New York to work on this window. Let's look at the big 3 and Oliver. Oliver needs the movie paycheck. He and Loretta still have great chemistry, but when it feels like he's about to ask Loretta to marry him, he kind of freaks out and backs down. What do you guys think? Do you want these 2 to end up together, or is Oliver's true love the theater, which he throws out, and now his true love is the movies? Charles Hayden Savage. Our unfun Uncle Charles hired his old driver to take him on a tour of LA. Did we get a good enough look at Charles's old driver to know anything about him? Mabel Mora. Mabel comes to Los Angeles, gets this big party thrown in her honor, yet doesn't invite Tobert to it? Boy, I really think Tobert's getting Oscared, if you know what I mean. How much money do you think Mabel asked for? We've only had one episode, but you know what that means. It's time for tinfoil hat theories. Let's go. One episode, let's roll. And it's going to start off some feedback by a good member of the Clue crew, Luca. Luca wrote, I just realized, or heard from a little bird, that Brazzos is an anagram of Sazz Bro. Sazz Bro. Okay, now let's start putting some things together. In this first episode, we meet the directors of a possible Only Murders in the Building movie, and they're known as the Brothers Sisters. So we've got Sazz Bro, Brother Sisters. You see Brother Sisters, and honestly, I think of this novel I read back in 2016 called The Sister Brothers. It's a Western set novel about two assassins. Very interesting. I gave it 4 stars on Goodreads, so I must have liked it. Now you put that together with something we've seen in the trailer where maybe we're going to meet one of our main characters' siblings. And is this another sibling mystery? A bit like Bro had to deal with his brother Dickie. What do you guys think? Does Sazz have a brother? Question mark, question mark, question mark. You know what to do. Go down in the comments on YouTube. Give us all your thoughts on social media at DoublePHQ, Twitter, Instagram, Threads, Facebook.com/DoublePHQ. We want to hear from you. Now, I've mentioned we've already done a look at the Season 4 trailer. Let's read some feedback from that because it's very exciting. Now, some people are worried about Season 4. Matt wrote, I worry we're jumping the shark with all these cameos and star-studded roles in Season 4. Hey, Matt, write us. What did you think after the first episode? And then Stan wrote in with what he calls the wildest theory. What if Charles is the murderer and Sazz was the target? He thinks Sazz is the reason why Joy left him in Season 3, and Charles was sick of being overshadowed by Sazz. Stan writes, Charles was gone from the party when Sazz was shot. Whew, crazy theories already. In addition to feedback about our breakdown of the Only Murders in the Building Season 4 trailer, we've got this great feedback on this first episode. Good Days wrote, the podcast trio were in Sazz's apartment. Did you wonder what those sounds were? They heard it, but then when nobody responded to them calling out for Sazz, they ignored it. Good Days immediately thought the killer was in the other room and just escaped through a window. Why didn't they go and check out that sound? Somebody with the handle RDJKSI said, Joy's boyfriend is the murderer. Never say never, but that's kind of a quantum leap to suspect Scott Bakula. And finally, Lonely One wrote, Bev is a studio executive, or is she a studio executor? Guys, what do you think? One episode in, who's your leading suspect? I'm sure we're going to meet a lot more next week. In episode 2, Gates of Heaven, Mabel and Oliver begin investigating Arconia's West Tower and get trapped inside an ominous game. Meanwhile, Charles is visited by 2 individuals from his complex past. What do you think, guys? Who do you think shot Sazz? Write to us and let us know.